reclamation of the word disabled for me is so important, so that when we do say like I'm disabled, we don't think like it's not like someone sticking a name tag on their forehead and being like, hello, my name is shithead, you know. And I think, you know, being able to use the word like disabled and saying it, and I think disabled isn't a dirty word, it's a marker. It just means that you have different access needs than what other people have. And that's essentially what it comes down to, really, is like, what are your access needs? How do you need support to access these spaces? So yeah, I'd say I've kind of always gone for what I want, and made sure that people know that equally, like, I am disabled, but I'm still going to go for it. It doesn't matter.
Ma'am, the Wendy, what do you want to order? I don't. Do you want like a?
I like to think about the disabled people that have come before me and who have fought for the things that I have today, and who have fought for the representation, and who have given their lives to be able to empower disabled people. And I'm aware that like not every disabled person feels this way, but this is just how I feel, is that if I didn't advocate for that, my community of people, I would be doing a disservice, because there is so much power and there is so much grit and there is so much tenacity in disabled people that actually I feel like it would just be such a disservice to completely ignore that. And if I can help change someone's opinion, or, you know, give them a couple of pointers, then like that's amazing. Like,
people think I'm inspirational. I do to an extent, but like at the end of the day, it's about you. And if you're wanting to put the work and effort into doing something, I'm not gonna really influence you on it. You know, the next day you're gonna forget who I am as a person anyway. It doesn't really matter. The true people that are good advocates are the ones that went to government and they changed the laws. Those are the true advocates. The one that go to that go to Washington D.C. every single year. They're out there despite all their health problems and, you know, difficulty traveling, and flying on the airplane sucks with a wheelchair. You know, they're going and making the effort and talking to Congress. Those are the real advocates. The ones, me doing the podcast here, is not really doing anything at all. Posting on social media, doing nothing.
I absolutely back you up with what you say, that you do need to go and you need to message the people who can make a change. But actually, social media is also great for visibility and bringing awareness about these issues. And I think you're right. I think sometimes social media is an echo chamber. Absolutely. And we need to, you know, follow and diversify our feeds so that it doesn't all look the same, because if everybody's shouting the same message into the same echo chamber, then it's going to get lost and it's going to get boring. But, you know, it's great for visibility too. And even though I feel like, you know, not necessarily making massive scale impact, again, like I go back to that, like small scale impact is just as important.
I get to feel all the hate messages coming to me right now, and loving you, and I'm just getting canceled in the process. But I think it's good to have the conversation.
No, don't cancel Joe, because this is great. And also, no, this is so great, right? Because it's two different views on the same topic, which is perfect, because not everybody has the same view. Not everybody is going to agree with me. People are going to think that I'm too optimistic. People are going to think that I am, I don't know, an airhead or whatever. But it's great to have two completely opposing views, but also be able, and as you said, be respectful enough to understand that we do see the world differently.
So you made a post talking about how Crossfit had accommodated you, so let's put fire under their ass to accommodate disabled people. So like, how were you not accommodated?
So this year's CrossFit Open was just really poorly programmed, and it was really, really poorly programmed for all adaptive athletes. And there was a lot of controversy going into the Open, which is, like, for those who don't know, the Open is a worldwide competition where if you like partake in CrossFit, you can enter into this competition. It's a worldwide competition, and at the end of the competition you get your worldwide ranking, so against like your age group, your sex, and also like if you're like me, it's against other adaptive athletes, which is great. And there was a lot of controversy going into this year's Open because CrossFit got rid of the semi-finals for adaptive athletes, so it became the Open and then straight to the games. There was no semi-finals anymore, which there was in previous years, which is another issue. And so I came out of the end of the Open really quite upset because just the programming was bad and they hadn't listened, and it was just for a sport that means so much to me to feel so disregarded and not listened to. And I'm not just talking about, like, when I say not listened to, I don't just mean like my voice. I mean like a community of people's voices who were really upset by this. Was actually really hard, and I actually kind of had to look at myself and be like, you need to take a step back from this now. You need to have a couple of weeks off. I think if it was up to me, if I was like head of HQ at CrossFit, I'm head of DEI. Hello, my name is Brooke Melhouse. I'm head of DEI at CrossFit HQ. I would change up the classification system quite a lot. So particularly around my category, I would change how people are classified. I'd change if it was, so at the minute it's above and below elbow. And I actually think it should be above and below elbow, yes, but then also above and below wrist. Because if you have wrist function and then you're against someone who has got like me, a teeny tiny piece of elbow, and I'm competing against someone who's got a wrist, that's a whole forearm that they have more than I do.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Mics One JoeySooch. I am Joe Sooch, and I'll be giving my to Brooke. Brooke is a badass CrossFit athlete who was at one point the top 20th woman in the world. All her life she was born without a right hand and wrist and elbow. She's also a fellow podcaster called Disabled and Proud. Do you think of yourself the same way I do, that you don't think of yourself as disabled? Like, you say you do, but like, do you just think of it more like, hey, I just have a extra challenge, but I'm going to do this anyway?
I think it's super interesting, the word disabled, because I also had this conversation with someone else who was actually quite a lot older than me. And they were saying that they acquired their disability when they were like roughly 35, and this was 30 years ago. So they're like mid-60s, pushing 70s, right? And they really struggled with becoming disabled because society had seen it as such a negative thing. It was a terrible thing that happened, and he acquired his disability, so it was this massive, it was a traumatic event, and that's really awful. But it took him so long to kind of come around to the realization that being disabled is not a bad thing. And I think reclamation of the word disabled for me is so important, so that when we do say like I'm disabled, we don't think like, it's not like someone sticking a name tag on their forehead and being like, hello, my name is shithead, you know. And I think, you know, being able to use the word like disabled and saying it, and I think disabled isn't a dirty word, it's a marker. It just means that you have different access needs than what other people have. And that's essentially what it comes down to, really, is like, what are your access needs? How do you need support to access these spaces? Do you need support to access these spaces? Do we have that support in place? Can we provide that support? And if we can't, why are we not? And that's where I think the really interesting like melting pot of disability and disabled and the reclamation of the words and the power in the words comes into play. So yeah, I'd say I've kind of always gone for what I want and made sure that people know that equally, like, I am disabled, but I'm still going to go for it. It doesn't matter.
Ma'am, the Wendy, what do you want to order? I don't. Do you want like a Whopper or something? No. Damn, what is it? What did Wendy's have? Not Whoppers. Man, I fucked it up. But what patties? Square patties? What do they call their sandwiches?
You know what? I really like Wendy's. So like, I'm good for whatever you're gonna serve at me.
I'll just give you a Sunday, but like, okay, like, find someone else that like cares about your stuff. I'm just here to help you order stuff. Okay. Yeah, it is interesting. I think like you say, like the word disability, the context of it. I think like the better way to go about it is to say, not I'm a shithead, because that's hilarious. But like to say I have a disability, I think that puts a lot less. I think it describes you as a person. It's kind of like I have blonde hair, I have one less arm, I have something. But when you're disabled, it just kind of seems like disabled means that everything is disabled. It's like a blanket term. I don't think that happens. I think it's like I have a disability, and it's like an aspect of you, like yeah, and then you can add other things too. I don't think like most people really care about the context at all either. You know, like I don't. I think
It's
it's
interesting
if you're
though,
real.
because I think in the disabled community, there's this whole, you identify how you want to identify, and far be it for me to tell someone, a disabled person, how to identify, whether that's person first language or disability first language. You like identify how you want to identify, but it's always so interesting, isn't it? Because like going back to like I think is it epistemology, which is like the root where words come from, and people are so upset that the disability starts with dis, which traditionally means bad or not worthy or not good. And I think that is literally where 99.9% of the problems come from, is that because it's seen as like a dis word, so like disadvantage, disabled, they all kind of for so long historically fell under the same camp of words that using it now kind of feels confusing. But then I think for someone like me, I think, oh no, I want to reclaim it, and there's so much power in it, and actually it's a reclamation of disability for me.
I mean, I think it's literally like a description of what you are. Like you have a disadvantage. You have a dis of your ability to do things. I think that's like the only meaning of it. If you're just gonna choose another word like handicap, it's still like the same thing almost. So you might as well just stick to it and just empower it. Like the black people empower the N word. It's like this horrible, degrading thing, and then now like in every rap song, and like they embrace it, and like they. I think we should just do the same instead of like pretending like we're all special people and we should change things to make us feel better. That's not really equality. That's more of like you want to be privileged and like that's the standard of other things. That it's like I think there's a lot bigger thing we could worry about instead of like the nuances of language too. Like give me
Yeah.
a break. Like let's fight for more. Like allow us to have like jobs where we can work without losing our insurance. That's a big one that we should be doing. Not caring about how they call us. Give most the topic is only popular really in a small subset of the disability community. The mainstream is never going to give a shit about what they call it. They're going to call us regardless of what either the disability or a handicap spot. That's gonna how they're going to talk to us for the rest of their lives. Like there's no convincing them in any context. Like, do you agree with me, or should we change our ways?
No, I think we definitely need to change our ways, because I think the reason that we don't really know how to approach disability or talk about disability or have these conversations is because for so long it was hidden. Like you think, and like obviously my context is England, right? So I'm from the UK, so my context is thinking about how disability was shunned and not spoken about for a really long time. Disability wasn't on TV. There were no disabled characters in any of like our, we call them, what are they called, the soaps. Well, you guys have soap operas, right? But we
Yeah,
yeah, we have them as well. But these are like long running ones. I'm thinking like the traditional ones, which are like Coronation Street, EastEnders, Emmerdale, the top three. Disabled characters weren't portrayed in those TV shows, and if they were, they were to be pitied. And like, when was the first time we saw a disabled character on like a cinema screen that wasn't either a bad person or in a role to be pitied? Well, it's very questionable, right? So we haven't actually had the space, and we haven't had the representation to be able to talk about these things, and actually, wider society does need to learn. But again, this is where this kind of comes into play. Like, it's not a comfortable conversation to have. Having conversations about disability and about how people have been excluded because of disability aren't nice conversations to have. They're not comfortable, but then we don't grow from a place of comfort. We grow from a place of being uncomfortable, and if that helps you on your journey, then actually that's a good thing, regardless of whether it's been comfortable or not. You've probably learned something at the end of it. So yeah, I think society does need to change.
Do you like the word disabled then? Do you think we should be using that, or do you think we should change it to something else?
No, I think we keep the word disabled. I'm all for the reclamation and giving it its power.
I was hoping you were gonna say no, and I was gonna be like, oh, your podcast is called Disabled and Proud, and like you're being a hypocrite. But no, I get it. I think we have bigger things to worry about. Like, just I think we have to like relax a little bit. Like we can do more things that I get controversial opinion that I have, and I want to get your opinion on it. So, do you think advocacy is worth it?
Do I think advocacy is worth it in terms of disability?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely, 110%. I think that it is worth it. It's not easy. That's the thing. It's not easy, and it's a slog, and sometimes you can feel like you are slamming your head against a brick wall and people aren't listening and people don't care. And historically, change has taken a really freaking long time to come into place. But actually, I like to think about the disabled people that have come before me and who have fought for the things that I have today, and who have fought for the representation, and who have given their lives to be able to empower disabled people. And I'm aware that like not every disabled person feels this way, but this is just how I feel, is that if I didn't advocate for that, my community of people, I would be doing a disservice, because there is so much power and there is so much grit and there is so much tenacity in disabled people that actually I feel like it would just be such a disservice to completely ignore that. And if I can help change someone's opinion, or give them a couple of pointers, then like that's amazing. Like maybe I've helped someone else out, and for me that's like the best thing. And yeah, I think disability advocacy is like really important.
I mean, do you want to hear my opinion, or should we just move on to?
No, like let's hear your opinion. I'm intrigued to see as to why it's different.
Just don't make me realize I put Vaseline on. Yeah, I've been talking about 2.5 hours. But we're all good. Yeah, I think advocacy, I see like why people think advocacy is important, but I think advocacy is unimportant in many ways that people are approaching it. So like posting on social media, I think it's like the most useless way of advocating ever, because you're not really making any change. So like I talked about this yesterday with you. So like a wheelchair user parked in a handicapped spot, a guy parked in the spot next to him, and there are lines there, so you have to like be a certain distance away from it. So they have a ramp, the ramp goes down, they can go on. So the video showed that he parked too close and he wasn't disabled, so he wasn't even supposed to be there. He could probably be in it for 5 minutes anyways. And so like he was showing a video, like he couldn't get in the ramp because the car was there. And I commented on the video like, it's great you want to show this, but your audience is mostly disabled. It's not going to help anyone. The only change you can do is you have to confront the person, them see why it happened, like why they shouldn't park there, instead like repercussions of their action. He's never going to see the video, so he's going to do the same thing over again. Mm-hmm. People don't really react to a video at all. It just doesn't happen. It's happened a lot. Like I can use other example. Nike shoes are made by children, child labor and such. Do people still buy Nikes? They're flying off the shelves every single day. Like chicken nuggets are made from like disgusting things. Every couple of years, a video goes viral of how it's made. People may like stop eating McDonald's for a day, and then like they go back to eating McDonald's because they just forget. Like it doesn't really do a difference. Me posting about my disease would not help in any capacity to anything. Like if you're on an airplane and it's someone choking to death, and then you come up like, oh, I know this rare disease that turned muscles into bones, and they're like dying. It's like, that's the last thing I'm gonna hear before I die. Like, can you go and help me? You know, like that doesn't help you at all. Like, me posting a
Yeah.
half naked picture of myself will not help in any capacity. It's just more of a self, it's for vanity basically at the end of the day. Like, it's not gonna help in anything. I get a lot of likes, a lot of comments on it, tied into like inspirational thing. People think I'm inspirational. I do to an extent, but like at the end of the day, it's about you. And if you're wanting to put the work and effort into doing something, I'm not gonna really influence you on it. You know, the next day you're gonna forget who I am as a person anyway. It doesn't really matter. The true people that are good advocates are the ones that went to government and they changed the laws. Those are the true advocates. The one that go to Washington D.C. every single year. They're out there despite all their health problems and, you know, difficulty traveling and flying on the airplane sucks with a wheelchair. You know, they're going and making the effort and talking to Congress. Those are the real advocates. The ones, me doing the podcast here is not really doing anything at all. Posting on social media, doing nothing. It might help if I had a bigger number and I'll have more influence to be like invited to the White House lawn. But honestly, I'm not really doing anything realistically. The one that going in Congress help, you know, get formula being covered by insurance, that helps. And, you know, like getting tests covered by insurance, that's really hard, or getting more funding for cures. Those are the true advocates. Me posting on my social media and you posting CrossFit is not doing anything either. It's just not. It's nice about it, and it's great, but like at the end of the day, it really doesn't do anything. Like that, realistically, that's what happens. I've seen people that get lost in that, and that's
I think that's a
realistically.
really interesting point of view because I don't agree with it because I think advocacy and
I love it.
awareness it doesn't always have to be like massive scale because I think what you're talking about is like big scale things, right? But what about the little scale? You know, like because you've posted a picture, like you might have helped someone, or you know, like you're talking about that video, for example, with the guy in the wheelchair, right? So you're right. The person who did it might not have seen that video and might not have come across it and might never come across it. But there might be someone who does see it and thinks, "Oh, I've done that, and I've really badly impacted somebody else's day. I'm gonna learn from that." And I think that that's, you know, small space advocacy is just as important and is, you know, an activism, particularly activism, right? Small scale activism is just as important as big scale activism because change doesn't always come about from top down. Bottom up is also just as important. So I think, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I know exactly what you're saying, that by being on social media, it's not like we're making a massive scale difference. But actually, maybe we're making small scale difference that we will never know about. It's the ripple effect, right? You don't know how you've affected someone. And I think that's just as important as big scale, like, politics. That's just as important.
I love how we're just agreeing on everything and we're still being respectful of everything too. It's awesome to have for both sides of the arguments. It's really great. I just don't think it's really. I just think we have to put more effort into making a physical scene. Like, I'll give another example. Like, I went to H&M. I'm pretty sure you have it. I think it's actually a UK company anyway, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a European company.
Yeah, they have great clothing. I don't know, and good prices. But anyways, like they didn't have accessible doors, and it was like really heavy duty doors, and I emailed them and DM'd them, and they like actually got back to me. Was it surprising? Like, they must get millions of DMs a day, which is really great. But some people just just post on social media like, "Oh, H&M is not handicap accessible. Like, let's all raise our forks and like put them out of business." And I'm like, no. Like, I went and confronted them and like messaged them and made that change. Like, that real change that would help other people. Posting on social media would absolutely do nothing. Like, you have to like physically go and make change. You can't just doing social media is such a low bar of doing anything. I think it's just a way like, hey, I am doing something, and like I may be helping, but like it's really not that. Like you have to confront the person that will actually be able to make change. So now the door is handicap accessible. That couldn't have been done if I just posted on social media and have done nothing. You know, like you have to like go and make the effort. And I think that what happens with a lot of disabled people. They want the world to change, but then they don't want to be involved in the change. So they're just waiting for others to like help carve a path. So like with the podcasting, I'm I am like the very few disabled people that are monetized YouTubers and monetized podcasters. I didn't really have any role models to look up to, so I was like, hey, you know what? I want to do it myself because I think it's possible. Like, why should I limit myself to it? And then here I am doing it. And then others be like, no, it's too hard. I can't do it. You know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, like the only limitation is really yourself. Like, just go and do it. That's how I've been envisioning, and I think that's like where the real change is. But yeah.
But I love that because I really resonate with what you said about you didn't have anybody to look up to who looked like you doing what you wanted to do. Because I felt that way about when I started Disabled and Proud. I really wanted to listen to these conversations of, like, between powerful disabled people, because let's be honest, how often do you find a conversation between a non-disabled person and a disabled person, and it all centers around how they're disabled and how they're an inspiration and how their life has been a crazy effort, and they've done all these things and they're amazing, and 9 times out of the 10 they're probably like a para-Olympian or they've done something for charity. And there are other powerful disabled people out there who are making change in different ways. And that's exactly why I wanted to create the podcast, because I wanted to have these conversations to be like, yo, like, sometimes being disabled is really difficult, but there is beauty in it as well. And that's why I created it, because I couldn't find it, and I wanted to find it, and I wanted to see these people, but it wasn't there. So very similar with you, I created it myself. But interesting what you say about social media, and particularly thinking about what you said about H&M, right, and its inaccessible door, because I absolutely back you up with what you say, that you do need to go and you need to message the people who can make a change. But actually, social media is also great for visibility and bringing awareness about these issues. And I think you're right. I think sometimes social media is an echo chamber. Absolutely. And we need to, follow and diversify our feeds so that it doesn't all look the same, because if everybody's shouting the same message into the same echo chamber, then it's going to get lost and it's going to get boring. But, it's great for visibility too. And even though I feel like, not necessarily making massive scale impact, again, like I go back to that, like small scale impact is just as important.
I get to feel all the hate messages coming to me right now, and loving you, and I'm just getting canceled in the process. But I think it's good to have the conversation.
No, don't cancel Joe, because this is great. And also, no, this is so great, right? Because it's 2 different views on the same topic, which is perfect, because not everybody has the same view. Not everybody is going to agree with me. People are going to think that I'm too optimistic. People are going to think that I am, I don't know, an airhead or whatever. But it's great to have 2 completely opposing views, but also be able, and as you said, be respectful enough to understand that we do see the world differently, but we have these views, but we can also appreciate the other person's views. Is that not the whole reason that you get into doing this kind of thing, is to learn from someone else?
I'm just here for the cloud, and just to yell at me and you tell me to go fuck myself for some reason, and then we just say goodbye, and then we just never talk again. Yeah. So. And then just for me to crack the WENDYS joke. So that's been like 6 months in the running, so like I'm having a great day. But we're gonna continue on to CrossFit. So let's talk about CrossFit. You're a huge CrossFitter. I'm disabled as fuck, but I watch the CrossFit games every year for some strange reason. I find it just really interesting to watch, even though I would have loved to be in it, but I would never ever be in one. So let's start with, how much do you bench?
Okay, so I actually can't bench press because I am absolutely petrified of putting a barbell anywhere near my throat and chest area, because I don't have the ability to like push up with my right hand. So for me, it's not about bench press. I always go with what I can deadlift. And considering that I deadlift with like one hand, I can deadlift 85 kilograms, which is, I think, maybe 160 pounds. It works out to like maybe double roughly. I'm gonna do the maths right now. But for me, I'm quite proud of that.
Hey Siri, what's 85 kilograms to pounds?
85 kilograms is 187.39 pounds.
Wow.
She's a strong girl.
Yeah, holy shit, that's a lot. That's like, I'm gonna assume your body weight is like 120-ish, 130, so that's almost half your body weight. 1.5. Right?
So I'm 51 kilograms, so it's just over and a bit more.
Hey Siri, what's 51 kilograms to pounds?
51 kilograms is 112.44 pounds.
Wow, so you're almost benching double your weight.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow, that's impressive though. That's just, the limited knowledge I have about gym, but that's really impressive to lift almost your body weight. Double your body weight.
Yeah. I'm very proud. I'm proud of that deadlift. Like, I'm very proud of that. It's really funny actually. So Monday, so yesterday when we were speaking, I just PB'd on a new weight for cleaning, which is when you like throw the barbell up and you kind of catch it on your front rack. And so as a disabled athlete, like, there's no point in me chasing big numbers because it's silly. Like, I will get injured. My body was not, the whole Olympic weightlifting model was not designed around my body and never will be. But if I can get to body weight, then I'll be like so happy. And yesterday I got 11 kilograms off my own body weight, which is the closest I've got. And
oh my
I was
God,
just
congrats.
so happy. Thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. It means that like the hard work that I put in is paying off, which is good.
Yeah, that's really hard to do, honestly. For a 120-pound person, it almost doesn't seem logical that you could do that.
Just training, just like getting back in and being that 1% better every day when it comes to CrossFit.
Yeah, so you made a post talking about how CrossFit hasn't accommodated you, so let's put fire under their ass to accommodate disabled people. So like, how were you not accommodated?
So this year's CrossFit Open was just really poorly programmed. And it was really, really poorly programmed for all adaptive athletes. And there was a lot of controversy going into the Open, which is, like, for those who don't know, the Open is a worldwide competition where if you like partake in CrossFit, you can enter into this competition. It's a worldwide competition, and at the end of the competition you get your worldwide ranking, so against like your age group, your sex, and also like if you're like me, it's against other adaptive athletes, which is great. And there was a lot of controversy going into this year's Open because CrossFit got rid of the semi-finals for adaptive athletes, so it became the Open and then straight to the games. There was no semi-finals anymore, which there was in previous years, which is another issue. This year the programming was just really bad. Like, every single week for me as an upper extremity athlete, I got squats, a different variation of a squat. And now just because I'm an upper extremity athlete doesn't mean that I have super strong legs, and that assumption was very much made. And I know that there was a lot of problems for the lower extremity people as well, who were told, well, not told, but their workouts involved a lot of upper body, which just because they don't have lower extremity doesn't necessarily mean that they have super strong upper extremity. Like, I guess the science would science if you didn't understand disability, but clearly they didn't. And so I came out of the end of the Open really quite upset because just the programming was bad and they hadn't listened, and it was just for a sport that means so much to me to feel so disregarded and not listened to. And I'm not just talking about, like, when I say not listened to, I don't just mean like my voice. I mean like a community of people's voices who were really upset by this. Was actually really hard. And I actually kind of had to look at myself and be like, you need to take a step back from this now. You need to have a couple of weeks off. Don't enter a box. Don't do CrossFit. Have a break. because it can get quite heavy when you think about things like that, and that it's upsetting. So I took some time off, and I've kind of recently come back into CrossFit, and like I do love it as a sport. I love the camaraderie. I love being able to push myself. I love the variations. I love all of that. But actually, what I've decided for myself is I'm going to put a lot less pressure on myself and actually have more fun with it, because I'm someone that when I have fun, that's when I do my best work. So when I'm having fun on a podcast, that's when I do my best podcast. When I'm having fun at work, it's when I do my best work. When I have fun in the gym, that's probably when I'm going to get the best out of myself. So actually, for me, it's going to become more about fun than it is about, being a super competitive athlete now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of funny now. I were talking about the CrossFit, and we were talking about the other conversation. So have you ever emailed or talked to CrossFit about your issue that you had that could be fixed for next year?
Yeah, I have. What's really interesting is a couple of weeks ago, CrossFit actually fired their whole DEI department. The whole department had gone. But yeah, I emailed them.
Is it because they were doing a bad job, or they didn't want the department anymore? Do you know?
I mean, the article that I read, the way that it read and the way that I interpreted it was that they were putting money on other pieces of CrossFit. They were hedging their bets on other areas, and they just got rid of the DEI department. I don't know if they're going to replace it. I don't know if the adaptive scheme is going to happen again. Who knows? But at the minute, it doesn't look like it exists. So it's quite sad.
Well, I'm going to split this episode into its own CrossFit episode and just talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it because I think exercising is important, and disability health is important. I mean, exercising is healthy for every individual, and it should definitely be a space for disabled people to work out and compete with each other. The only thing that's hard about disabled people competing with each other is that there's so many ways of disabled people, so many limb differences, and it's hard to really have a test, I guess, that really will highlight each person, because there's just so many variables that can have. I'm sure if you're missing, let's say you're just missing a wrist, automatically you're disabled, but you have such a bigger advantage over someone, that's missing their whole arm. It's how do you, yes, they're both disabled, but how do you make it even though, because they kind of have that advantage. So hard have it really even, where a regular person, it's easy. You can be you can have weight class, you can have height, stuff like that. But disabled people, it's hey, we're gonna throw you all into this pool and have the best person win. And I'm gonna assume sometimes it's the better off disabled people that will win more, because they just have an advantage, because they just have more working limbs and more normal limbs, I guess. It's so hard. How do you develop a system that works for everyone? Because I think there's some CrossFitters that are never able to win just because they're too disabled. As horrible as that sounds,
It's such an interesting one, isn't it? Because this is the exact problem that I have with classification, and that's what it comes down to, is classification. How do we classify, and how do we make sure that the playing field is even? And I think you're right. I'm not sure that there is an answer. I'm not sure that there is an answer to make the playing field super even for absolutely everyone. But equally, in saying that, there are definitely steps that can be taken to make it more even. And I think sometimes, people do things
you are
just
the
to look
expert
good.
here, what can they do better to make it more, I guess, accessible and more even? What did you notice that could be changed?
I think if it was up to me, if I was head of HQ at CrossFit, I'm head of DEI. Hello, my name is Brooke Melhouse. I'm head of DEI at CrossFit HQ. I would change up the classification system quite a lot. So particularly around my category, I would change how people are classified. I'd change if it was, so at the minute it's above and below elbow. And I actually think it should be above and below elbow, yes, but then also above and below wrist. Because if you have wrist function and then you're against someone who has got like me, a teeny tiny piece of elbow, and I'm competing against someone who's got a wrist, that's a whole forearm that they have more than I do. They can still push up on that, whereas I'm relying on like blocks and like ab mats and stuff. Same goes for lower extremity athletes. I think maybe it's a bit different. I don't know. That's not my reality, so I can't necessarily comment on it. But they have above and below knee. And then I would go as far as going above and below ankle as well, because it's another joint that they have that other people don't. Like, I think people tend to forget that I think it's something crazy. Like, I have 20 less bones in my body because I don't have a forearm and a hand. So the people that have those extra bones are naturally at more of an advantage. And that's the same with lower extremity athletes. The people who have more bones are at more of an advantage. It's just how it is. And obviously neuromuscular is not my category. I wouldn't know how to make that better, but I know a lot of people were left out of this year's Open because they were told, quote unquote, that they weren't disabled enough to compete. Can you imagine? Can you imagine having the gall and the gumption to be like, yeah, like you do have a neuromuscular disease, but by the way, you can't compete? Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's crazy to yeah, that is crazy. How I'd like someone, I can't imagine like someone telling me like, hey, you're not disabled enough, like, just go on with your life. It's like, okay, like, when you're being told that you're disabled for like 99% of your life, and it's like this one thing, it's like, oh, no. And it's like, not the best time to be called non-disabled because, yeah, but yeah, you really hit the nail on the head, is that it is hard to find a classification that is fair to everyone. But I think the other hard problem is, I think it's just numbers too, because there could just, let's say you're doing the people that have missing a wrist, for example, the number is much smaller, but if you just do limb difference crossfitter, the pool is much larger, so sometimes you can't even split them into category because it'd probably be like, you might just be like the only woman in that category. It's like, oh, I guess Brooke is the winner here. Like, she just had to lift up a pillow, and then you're the winner of the, you know.
Yeah.
I think
that's
like
exactly it. It's how do we find these classifications and the like the gene pool as such, and I don't mean that in like a DNA spec, but I mean like the people, the opportunity of meeting all the people that are going to fit these requirements is much smaller. You're right. So how do we make it accessible? I genuinely don't have the answers. I don't have the answers, but I've got some really good ideas. So if anyone wants to hit me up, like, feel free. Like, you can find my email if you find my social media.
But I'm canceled. No one will find me anymore. But yeah, like, do you ever, so like, you're disabled and you work out, I'm assuming mostly with disabled people, but like, do you ever just find yourself working out with regular people and you just have like I know like you do I think it's a lunge something, so what you do like a push-up, but you have like two mats on your right side replacing like your forearm and wrist, so you can do the push-up. So like, do you ever just compete with regular people, because it seems like you can just hang out with most of them anyway with ease without, you have like your slight modification to help you, but you can still keep up. Like, do you ever do that?
So it's actually incredibly rare that I train with other adaptive athletes. Incredibly rare.
Oh.
Like, super rare. Like, out of all of the people I train with, I am the only adaptive athlete in my friendship group that does CrossFit. But that's not to say that I don't have adaptive athletes that are friends. Some of my best friends are adaptive athletes as well. And when I get to throw down with them and I get to train with them, that's incredible, because there are certain things in the gym that we will all clock and we'll all be able to push each other in better ways, and we understand modifications a lot better than those who are not adaptive athletes. So I wish that I was able to train with more adaptive athletes, but we're few and far between in the UK. So, and we all live quite far apart. So it's not the easiest.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it, that it's just really a numbers game. Like, if you don't have someone that's disabled close to you, that you don't work out, you gotta work out with, basically, that's someone that fills in your crossfitting, and I'm like, you lifting almost double your body weight, like, that's, I don't think I think more people might have a problem competing with you versus you competing with them. And it's like, maybe you even motivate them more. It's like, shit, if bro can do this, like, I have to, like, hustle harder so I can be better. And, like, oh, a disabled person can't be better than me. Like, I'm gonna, like, go to the gym, like, at 2 a.m. when no one's watching, and, like, I'll show Brooke, and then,
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because that also, like, falls under the category of inspiration porn, and, like, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And it's a minefield, isn't it? Because I think what you also said about cancel culture is something that's super prevalent as well in the disabled community, is that nobody wants to mess up, particularly surrounding the disabled community, because you don't want to offend people and you don't want to upset people.
Oh,
but
I
at
don't
the same
care.
time, coming back to what I said,
I'm just flying.
Going back to what
I mean, maybe
said,
I'm canceled already, and I just don't know about it. I don't know. Like, someone tell me, please.
But that's what, like, going back to what I said about we don't learn if we don't go through these uncomfortable things, right? So actually, having conversations about being cancelled and stuff, and saying these opinions that you might feel might get you cancelled is actually a good thing to have, because you can grow from it. And I think society in and of itself needs to learn that cancel culture is vile, and it's much better to learn and grow. But that's my 2 pence.
Yeah, so my last question for you. So it shows throughout the podcast that you're always been motivated to do a lot of things. So I'm just assuming that you've been always motivated your entire life to do basically whatever your heart desires.
Yeah, like, I'm very fortunate that
Right?
I have been able to like go after the things that I want to go after, and that's a complete privilege in and of itself. Like, I'm very, very aware of that. But also for me, like, if I have something in my mind, I'm gonna go for it. If I've got, like, a goal or a dream, like, I'll hustle until I get it. And, like, if I want it, I'm gonna go after it, and I'm gonna go as far as I can go. And I think that's just who I am at base level. And I think if I had a disability or not, I'd still be that person. So yeah, I mean, there's something to be said in tenacity, right? Like, I think I'm quite a tenacious person, and that's probably why I do CrossFit, because it does require quite a lot of tenacity, and you kind of got to be some level of, like, weirdo to enjoy, like, the horrible parts of it. So
yeah. So before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote, any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
Oh, firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on. Like, I've actually really loved this chat. I think I love that we've been able to have completely different viewpoints and also still respect each other's viewpoints and learn from that. I think, is that not?
I'm blocking
really
you right after this
beautiful thing that we've been able to
episode.
do?
What are you talking about?
That's just rude. That's rude. Like, I don't think you should. But I thank you for having me on. I think it's been really great. And yeah, if you wanna follow me, you can find me at Brooke Millhouse, or if you want to follow my podcast, it's at Disabled and Proud Podcast, and it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, and it's on YouTube with full captions.
Okay, thank you, Brooke, so much for giving me your time and expertise. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. You can follow Brooke. All the links from her will be in the description below. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Bye-bye.